So there's a lot of talk going on around BYD versus Tesla right now, because up until this point, Tesla has been known for being by far the most cutting edge, top of the line, like mass production EV maker, and BYD has been slowly picking up steam, and a lot of companies like to misrepresent Tesla in headlines, typically by saying things like BYD has outsold Tesla in delivering more electrified vehicles or more battery powered vehicles, but BYD also sells a lot of hybrids. So a lot of companies like to bunch together the hybrids in with the full EVs and therefore say, see, BYD is out delivering Tesla. And then you have the opposite end of the spectrum with all of the Tesla hyperbulls saying, yeah, but those still rely on gas, so it's not a big deal. I still think it's impressive, even if it's a combination of hybrids and full electric vehicles, that BYD was able to deliver like 3 million. That's still a lot of fairly efficient vehicles, but the main reason the story has been changing a lot more recently is because in the fourth quarter of 2023 specifically, not the entire year, this is a new trend, BYD actually outproduced Tesla in not just total vehicles, but also in fully electric vehicles. And that's the misconception I keep seeing pushed around line a lot these days, is people keep saying, stop talking about BYD, they're including hybrids in their sales figures, when in reality, they're actually now outproducing Tesla in full electric vehicles, at least within the fourth quarter, which is making a lot of people now realize, okay, does this mean Tesla is no longer the number one EV maker in the world? Automotive expert Sandy Munro has actually been talking about this for a while. Whenever someone asks him who he thinks the biggest EV maker is going to be, he always came back to BYD. So he kind of saw this coming from several miles away, and now there's actually just data that's legitimately backing all of it up. You could maybe make the argument that Tesla had a lot of factory shutdowns or slowdowns within the fourth quarter because they were updating the Model 3 line with the refresh and all that, but the more impressive thing to me is Tesla used to have a very substantial lead on everybody else in the EV space, and now BYD has caught up very quickly, and it feels like, based on these demographics, BYD is accelerating faster than Tesla is, and there's not really a ton of evidence that gigafactories in their current form are going to be able to expand and grow their EV production at the same rate as BYD is, and it's kind of a silent giant because I know, like so many people watching this channel, we live in the United States, so BYD isn't a thing here. Nobody knows about BYD vehicles, stands for Build Your Dream, but of course when I went to Thailand, I was seeing them all over the place. There were Teslas and BYD vehicles, but I just didn't really have it on the front of my mind how quickly this company was growing and how easily they were able to transition themselves over from hybrid vehicles to full EVs. And the main reason most people are saying that BYD has such a substantial lead is because they're able to build vehicles usually far cheaper than most of Tesla's offerings, even somewhat cheaper than the Model 3 and Y, which is currently Tesla's lowest options. But BYD has also been much more aggressive with growth in Europe, even though they don't really build that many vehicles in Europe yet, although they have plans to. And I think the main reason, in case some of you are wondering, because I go on the BYD website, I look at their vehicle options, and they all look fine, you know, they look pretty good, they're aerodynamic, they've got a big emphasis on software, and of course the pricing is good, so I understand why they sell all that well, but at the end of the day, what I think it comes down to in regards to which EV company is going to sell the best, it really hasn't changed all that much. Whether it's BYD or Tesla or Rivian or Volkswagen or GM or Ford, no matter what automaker it is, the running theme here, with a few exceptions like Lucid, tends to be whichever company makes the most EVs will sell the most EVs. And BYD has actually existed before Tesla. They started in 1995 mainly as a cell manufacturer, and I think that's the reason BYD has such an absurd advantage here, is because they doubled down on battery production early on, and they just continued to scale and scale and scale. And because they're based in China, and the Chinese government, both for better or for worse, is known for moving very quickly, which I'm not trying to say is necessarily a better or worse form of government. There's definitely a lot of downsides to having a government that can act and move very quickly, but without getting too far off topic here, essentially BYD is able to get a lot of state funding and is able to build out factories and get permits to expand their mining business and their cell production business a lot faster than what we can get in the United States, and substantially faster than what anybody can get in Europe, in regards to like how quickly you can get a project off the ground, how quickly you can build new infrastructure, and how quickly you can start mining more materials. China is basically number one, and then after that it's a bit more North American region, and then below that is Europe. Just think about how long it took to get Giga Berlin online in Europe, and and they started way before Giga Texas did. And Giga Texas still took a lot longer than it should have, but it was certainly a lot faster than it would have been in California to build from the ground up. So I think a lot of government support and government reinforcements are the reason BYD is able to move and act so quickly. There's definitely a lot of instances where we've seen in China the federal government getting involved with financial support, so like making sure that their big brands and their big companies have all of the money they need, and that may have given BYD a big advantage over their American competitors like Tesla, because of course China and their government wants to make sure that their local brands have a big leg up and a big advantage over foreign brands. All countries do this, by the way. That's not exclusive to China. Just like how in the United States, the federal government is subsidizing certain EVs over others based on where they were manufactured and where the cell materials came from. So that's part of the reason there's only 10 electric vehicles in the US that qualify for the full $7,500 rebate. There's lots of other EVs that don't qualify because they're relying on foreign entities and foreign minerals, or foreign manufacturing, and the vehicles are imported. So every country, of course, wants to incentivize more domestic production, more local companies performing better, and of course China's just doing it in a much more drastic and probably effective way, which I hope other governments can model, which is that rather than bring more subsidization and more rebates to the point of sale, it makes more sense to basically remove a lot of the taxes and red tape and permits required to build up a lot of this infrastructure to build more batteries and build more vehicles, which is likely a huge reason BYD was able to grow and expand production so quickly. And with more vehicles on the market, you can afford to price them overall lower, because most of BYD vehicles are built in China. And as we all know, most of our products and electronics are built there because of not just the cost of labor being a lot lower than what it is in the US, but also the infrastructure and logistics of networks is so much more localized there. All of the silicon and all of the circuit boards and all of the materials that people need to build a complicated vehicle like an EV, whether it be displays, whether it be microchips or controllers or wiring harnesses, all of that stuff, a lot of it's built in China anyway, so it doesn't have to be as shipped as far as it does if we want to build vehicles in the United States or build them in Europe, because building little things like that, like wires and controllers and little cameras and displays, which our cars have a lot of, no one else in the world can really build those at the same volume with the highest quality at the lowest price that China is able to, because of their supply chain there. That's why all of our smartphones are still built in China, and that's why I think BYD has a huge leg up on Tesla, and I hope Tesla is competitive about this. I want them to catch up, but just knowing that Tesla is a lot more based in the United States and their next factory is being targeted for Mexico, and we're still like barely even breaking ground on that facility, I don't really see Tesla catching up to BYD unless they drastically expand Giga Shanghai. But more importantly, they're also going to have to introduce, I think, cheaper models like the next generation vehicle platform in order to match or beat the price and range figures that BYD is able to offer on the lower end vehicles. And so far, everything Tesla has said and Elon has said is mainly just been about, you know, how the next generation vehicle platform is going to be manufactured at Giga Texas or Berlin or Mexico, and there hasn't been much talk about when that vehicle is going to be brought to Giga Shanghai, even though I think it would be the perfect market for it, and honestly, that's likely where you're going to be able to expand your factory footprint and increase your production quicker than anywhere else on the planet. Am I wrong? Do you think Tesla is going to be able to catch up with BYD's full electric vehicle sales? Or do you think BYD, because of this absurd amount of growth they're having and the backing from the Chinese government, is that going to give them a permanent lead on Tesla? They're no longer the #1 EV automaker in the world. I do still think Tesla has a pretty permanent lead on electric vehicles in the United States, though. No one is really coming close to tapping them there, and BYD still doesn't sell vehicles in the US. So it's interesting how different the EV market, I think, is going to look outside of North America versus inside. But I'd love to get your guys' take in the comments down below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again, and have an excellent rest of your day.